Thanks for being patient. Sorry for the delay. I'd like to call this meeting to order. If you'd join me for the pledge, please. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'd like to start off tonight with comments from the general public. Nobody's jumping up.
Oh, yeah, sorry. I didn't know if that was my turn.
Just introduce yourself, please, if you don't mind.
Do I sit right here?
Yeah.
Okay.
The mic is really for the TV as well, so if you could talk into that, that'd be great. They can hear better. Yeah.
Just pull forward.
Okay. Good. Hi, everyone. My name is Desiree Leduc. My son, Dustin Leduc, is in his second year of pre-K at Carver. And I'm here to address some of the situations that we have with maybe cutting hours or getting rid of the assistant speech therapist. I just wanted to go over how the progress that my son has made with the speech therapy program has been amazing, and we're so blessed that they have these ladies that can do this for us. My son gets seen twice a week with the assistant speech therapist and once with the head speech therapist. Even his pediatrician is happy with his improvement, so we're really happy with that. And I just think that I understand there's cuts. I get it. I would be really upset, or and my husband as well, to see that the program gets cut, because the progress that he's made has just been so amazing, and we're so blessed that they have him. And if we didn't, we would have to go throughout service, and our health insurance doesn't cover it, so that's another big thing. And the amount of kids that they see all the time, and to leave it to one person or to cut them back a person and a half pretty much, I think would be really difficult. So that's really it. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you for your input. Appreciate it very much. Any others? Sure. Let's introduce yourself if you don't mind.
Sure.
Please. Thanks.
I'm Thea Dickinson Rolls. My daughter Lindsay Rolls is in her second year in the TAP/CAP program at the high school. So it's an alternative program for kids with social and emotional issues. Her history with anxiety and depression, particularly school-based, goes back a while. But in 8th grade, second half of 8th grade, she really started to struggle and couldn't get to school, despite being a very perfectionistic straight-A student. And we didn't really know what to do. The teachers were very accommodating, but there really just wasn't anything that we could do that was going to help get her to school. So second half of 8th grade, we ended up doing TECA, which is an online program. Coming back, she was interested in coming back and giving it a shot. Spoke with Karen Teichert, who had talked to us about the TAP/CAP program being available to her for her start of 9th grade. Since she has started this program, she has been able to be in school, with the exception of a couple of partial hospitalization programs that she has needed to attend in order to build some more school skills in order to be able to effectively manage. Sorry, I'm nervous. I wasn't planning to speak.
That's okay. You're all right. You're doing great.
Take a breath. Shake it off. Really, I attribute her ability to stay in school, to be in school, to be successful in school. She is on time with her credits. She is getting good grades. She is still struggling with her social emotional issues, although there has been significant improvement, and that is due to the staff in the CAP and TAP room. It's due in direct part to Mike Doyle, Lindsay Gonzalez, and Sarah Charbonneau. Currently, as in any kind of program like this, there have been students that come, students that go, and they have been effectively managing the needs of at last count 12, but I could be wrong on that number, different kids with significant social and emotional issues. These are children that, without this program being available, would be looking for out-of-district placement, which would be at a significantly higher cost to the district. I'm here not just for my child, who absolutely has benefited and continues to benefit. The relationships that she has with the staff in that room, I can't even impress upon you how important that is to get her to go to school, stay in school, and be successful at school. And I know that if my child is feeling it, that the other children there are feeling it as well. And I understand that this is, if powers that be cannot come to where they need to come, this is a program that will be cut. And it would really be to a great detriment to all of the students that are in that classroom currently. As a matter of fact, a couple of weeks ago, I had actually written an email expressing the need for more staff in that classroom, because they are working hard, despite the fact that there are only 3 of them in there to provide the support, both academically and socially, emotionally, for some of the more significantly challenged kids in the district. So I just wanted to express that I would really hate to see this program cut, not just for my own child, but again, if these programs aren't available to these students, what else will there be, and at greater cost to the district?
Thank you very much. Thank you, Jen. Please.
Hi, my
How
name
are
is
you?
Sharon Ellis. This is my daughter, Katie Ellis, who is a 2018 Carver High School CAP program graduate. And so clearly I'm here to speak on behalf of that program. And I had to write something down because I would never have been able to convey my feelings if I didn't. So I'm just going to read to you what I have here. So school has never been an easy road for my daughter, Katie. Severe social emotional needs, coupled with poor self-esteem and a lack of confidence in her abilities to succeed, have seriously impacted Katie's ability to find success in the traditional school setting. Since late elementary school, we have tried countless interventions: district curriculum accommodation plans, 504 plans, in and out of school counseling services, and various incarnations of an IEP. You name it, we have tried it. During her senior year of high school, various situations came to a head. Katie and I became regulars in the high school guidance office, meeting with school adjustment counselors, guidance counselors, the school psychologist, and her special education liaison. Katie had every intention of dropping out of high school, and if that didn't happen, it was quite likely that she would fail out. Enter the Carver High School CAP program. In its current form, this program, its amazing staff, and with a lot of support from home, everything changed for Katie. The one-on-one instruction, the built-in classroom supports, and the constant encouragement Katie received helped turn Katie into a more confident, willing, and motivated student who went from either dropping or failing out to a student whose last term of her senior year was the best she had ever done in her entire middle high school career. All B's was a beautiful thing to see, but even more beautiful than that was the confidence Katie now had in the proof that she could succeed. Cutting this program or altering the way in which it is delivered would be a great disservice to some of the most vulnerable of our student population. And I can just finish this off by saying, and Katie I think would agree with me, she would not be sitting here right now as a graduate of Carver High School if it was not for the staff and for that program. So I would just hope that that could be taken into consideration when you're reviewing the budget. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi,
Hi.
my name is Karen Place. I am also speaking on behalf of the CAP program because I too also bring along a student who was potentially going to drop out. Carver was paying for her to go to a school in Plymouth before the CAP was brought into play. Now I sit before you with a graduate, which at one point in time didn't seem realistic for us. The CAP program has worked really, really hard and brought Andrea to a really great place, along with basing all of her classes on nursing as she plans to become a nurse. So her academics were placed towards her career. She also was given an internship at Beth Israel, which she thrived at and loved, and got different tastes of what she wants to do as she gets older. My voice is shaking, I can hear it.
You're doing fine.
I hate public speaking.
All right. Just kind of stay into the mic so people can hear you at home and on the TV.
I look
if you don't
forward
mind.
to continuing to work with the CAP program, as my son John also has ADHD combined type, and he has been consistently failing for the past 2 years on a 504 plan in the mainstream. My hopes is to get him into CAP also so that he can be successful academically and have the same outcome as his sister and be a strong candidate for graduation and not on the road to dropping out of frustration. Do you want to say stuff?
If it wasn't for the CAP program, I wouldn't have graduated. I wanted to drop out. I was bullied severely in school, which caused me to have severe anxiety and depression. I was transferred to Pilgrim Academy, and Pilgrim just wasn't a good fit for me. I didn't fit in there. And when I heard about the CAP program, I was very, very hesitant to go because of my ordeal that I had to deal with at Carver. But Miss G, Mr. Doyle, and Miss Charbonneau, they all built a great relationship with me. They helped me one-on-one with all my classes, and without them, I wouldn't be where I am today, which is somewhere I never thought I'd be.
Awesome.
Great.
Cool. So, ladies, what you've given us so far is perspective, and that's fantastic, and we can use that. So, anybody else out there, this is probably one of the best public comment sessions I think we've ever had. So, your voice gives us voice. It's what we need. No more? That's good timing right there. Well, seeing nobody else jumping up, thank you very much. And we will move on to comments from the EAPC.
Good evening. For you who don't know me, I'm Tom Pinto, President of the Education Association of Plymouth and Carver. Unfortunately, we find ourselves in a difficult situation, a situation that Carver has faced before, as the second time in 3 years that Carver has to face potential layoffs. Layoffs impact not only staff and programs, but have a direct impact on the education of students. We are asking that school committee in the Carver community move forward with, at a minimum, level service budget, if not more. The Education Association of Plymouth and Carver, which represents teachers and paraprofessionals, all positions which we want to maintain, is ready to work with school committee in the Carver community to achieve that budget. The students of Carver have already suffered enough under the constraints of prior budgets. If we do not fight for the students, who will? As in the past, as we will in the future, the EAPC is always willing to stand up for the needs of the students. I ask that school committee propose a budget which will give Carver the schools that the students and community deserve. Jane, I'm going to pass the mic over to Jane.
Good evening. I am Jane Kent, and I represent the EAPC members. The Education Association of Plymouth and Carver opposes any school budget proposals that eliminate teaching or support staff at Carver Public Schools. Our students deserve access to the best possible education, and that means having adequately staffed schools. The EAPC is calling for the town to submit, at minimum, a level services budget. The Board of Selectmen budget proposal includes laying off 4 educators and reducing the hours for 2 other educators. There is simply no need for this, as town officials are blindly following a policy that is not grounded in reality or necessity. The EAPC supports effective, responsible fiscal management and strategies that encourage efficiency. The EAPC also maintains that budgeting decisions need to be made with a thoughtful approach to priorities, and not simply by following a formula or when it comes to our children, politics. Excuse me. The decision to eliminate these positions from our school is not responsible. In fact, it should be viewed as a warning to the community about weakening support for our public schools. It is true that Carver spends above what the state requires the town to spend on education. However, we all know that the state's baseline for education spending has been artificially suppressed for decades. Numbers don't lie, but manipulators love using numbers. Carver Public Schools was carved to the bone 3 years ago. Our students do not deserve more cuts. The EAPC hopes that you too value the work of our programs, like the TAP program that keeps students here and provides what they need, art and special education departments, our middle school history and foreign language departments, as well as our speech and language services for elementary students. These are all areas targeted for cuts, unnecessary cuts. The EAPC is asking the school committee to maintain all of our education services and to properly and wisely invest in our public schools. It takes courage to ask for more than is allotted. It takes courage to demand what you need when it's not given to you. We ask you to find the courage on March 11th. Consider that the townspeople have never denied the schools when they have a chance to vote, and that when you vote for a level service budget, plus the Technology College Vocational Pathways Program proposed by our superintendent, we will support you. Thank you.
So we'll move on to a brief approval of minutes before we get into the
I will
budget.
make a motion to approve the February 11th open session minutes.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any questions, comments, changes?
Oh, we're good.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. It's unanimous.
I'll make a motion to approve the November 26th open session minutes.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Comments, changes, or questions?
Good.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 I'm going to abstain because I was not at that meeting.
3 positive, 1 abstention.
I'll make a motion to approve the November 28th open session minutes.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Questions, comments, changes? None. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. It's unanimous. Now we'll move into the budget.
Can you make reference to the release of executive session minutes?
Oh, that
We
we're gonna,
have to announce that those minutes are being
You
released.
need a motion for that?
Don't need a motion, just need an official announcement from the chair.
that the November 26th, 28th minutes are based on the school committee meeting opening in regular session to vote to move to executive session. After the vote, we need to,
Sorry.
There's a lot there.
You just need to announce that you're.
we're going to release the executive session minutes
Yeah.
for those dates.
November
No
26th.
action of the committee is required.
So you just need an official announcement that those days, sorry, James, you need to say those dates, November 26th, November 28th, December 10th,
And
January
the-
14th. That those have all been released by the school committee, those executive session
You
minutes
don't
for
have the
those 4
14th
dates.
in here, though. You only have the 11th, the 26th, and the 28th.
I'll look at above
Right,
on
the 3 that are
A.
there. Oh, for these ones here.
Those for that. Sorry,
26th,
James.
the 28th, the 10th, and the 14th.
That those have all being released as executive session minutes.
I was going to ask you about that when I got here earlier.
So now we're all set.
Vacation Maine.
Yeah.
Now we move into the budget.
All right. So I just want to start out by saying that, obviously, we've gone to there's been a lot of discussion and deliberation amongst the administrative team in terms of where we are in terms of the budget. And the reality is we support all the educators in the room and want to maintain all those positions within the district. Part of the process is we have to say that our level service budget, which we're going to go through in the presentation, is above that of what the town is currently proposing for the budget for the school. So as part of that process, we have to say what would be reduced if the town's number is the number that becomes the budget for the school. So tonight's meeting is part of that process. We have to go through that and say, this is what level service is, this is what we need to bring everybody back. And we've already made some presentations. We need to probably go beyond bringing people back in terms of making some shifts and changes, and specifically in terms of career pathways. At our last meeting, we made some discussions and presentations about positions we feel we needed to add throughout the district. And those are going to be referenced in tonight's presentation. So we have that piece, but then the reality is the Board of Selectmen has voted a budget for the school, which is not a level service budget, which is a little lower than that. So we have to meet that gap. We have to say to the community, if that's where we end up, if that's the end result, what would have to be reduced to meet that gap? And that's the purpose of this presentation. That's the purpose of this evening's discussion. The school committee is not looking to take any action tonight. This is just a statement of this is what would happen to meet that gap if that's the direction that this ends up in. With ultimately the goal of us believing that some of the things we're going to discuss tonight as possible reductions, they're all painful. There's no place in this budget. So when I knew that there was going to be a shortfall, that there was going to be a difference between level service and what the town was proposing, that was hard because you look at it, there's no easy place to go. There's nothing that jumps out at you and says, yes, this is someplace where we're overstaffed right now. There's no place to go. So they're all difficult and painful decisions. So then with the administrative team, we put a thoughtful process into what could we possibly do? What things could happen to try to maintain the same level of services for students and that would have the least impact on students. And that's what's going to be presented here this evening. So going into the presentation, Meredith. So we'll just take us a little bit of history lesson of where we were to where we are tonight, because things have changed. And the reality is budgeting, especially for the school system, is always an evolving process. There's always different things in play, and things can change. So things have changed over the past month or two in terms of the amount of our shortfall. And my last slide in tonight's presentation is things can continue to change. There's always opportunities for movement in a positive direction. So the town has proposed a budget and actually the Board of Selectmen has voted a budget of $23,259,768. Sorry, I said that wrong. $23,259,768, which is an increase. That's right, that was the FY19 budget. The FY20 budget is $23,840,433, with an increase of $580,665, which is a 2.5% increase for the school's budget. That's been the town's proposal. That's the number they gave us a couple months ago, and that is the number that the Board of Selectmen has voted as the proposed budget for the school. And so it's a 2.5% increase. In January, we made a level service presentation at our school committee meeting. At that meeting, we said for us to level service would cost an increase of $987,582, which was a 4.25% increase. But as I said, different things happen and shift over time that allows that number to change. We were able to narrow in on some more specific costs. Sometimes we look at, we've been talking about things like electric bills, the cost of electricity at the elementary school. We've been narrowing in on special ed costs. We've been narrowing in on retirement costs. We've been narrowing in on health insurance costs. So there's all these variables that we're always looking at that change. And since our original presentation on January 14th, we've had some change in a positive direction. So 2 weeks ago, on February 11th, we made a presentation. The February 11th presentation for a level service budget, we said it would cost the district, the budget would be $24,161,454, which was an increase of $901,686, which was a 3.9% increase versus 4.25. But that still left a 1.4% difference between what the town is proposing and what we felt we'd need as a level service budget. And then the next slide actually shows, this was the slide that was sent on February 11th. We said we needed $24,161,454, a 3.9% increase to have a level service budget. But then as some people have stated here this evening, we feel like there's things we need to do beyond the level service budget. If you go back to our November school committee meeting, we actually made a presentation and listed several positions we feel like we need to add district-wide over the next 3 to 5 years to meet all the needs of our students. Now, we narrowed that list down. That list of positions back in November was I don't have the exact number, but it was close to, it was between $800,000 and $1 million worth of positions. And we realized we weren't going to come in this budget presentation and say we need, beyond our shortfall, an additional $800,000 in positions. So we focused down and said, where are our key areas of need if we were going to add beyond a level service? And we identified 3 positions in the February 11th meeting. A middle high school technology teacher, which would bring a technology engineering program for students in 9 through 12, and would begin what we're calling a direction called pathways. And we've been discussing the idea of developing career pathways at the middle high school. There's some real opportunities to use our current staff. We have outstanding staff who can do a lot of things within those pathways, and we're going to be working with the middle high school staff to start that direction. One place where we probably need growth is a technology engineering teacher. I don't know if we have that level of expertise within our current curriculum departments that could support a full build out of that program. So to start our pathways in the pathways directions, we feel it's important to add that middle high school technology teacher. We talked about returning the 5 half-time K-paras at the elementary school, which were reduced 2 years ago, feeling that was a key to supporting early childhood education. And then we also talked about just the reality of the number of devices we've brought into the school district in the past 2 or 3 years, that our tech support is a little thin, and that we could use some additional tech support. You know, we varied them out, whether it's a 0.3 position, a part-time tech position to support all the devices in the district. We said these are kind of key areas of need that we want to continue to support. We put a number value on those, and we said, beyond the level service, we had a level service shortfall, and then if we added these positions on, our shortfall we projected to be about $422,939. And so that's where we were 2 weeks ago. But as I said, things change and shift, and there are opportunities for us to close this gap, and we've had some of those opportunities happen over the last couple weeks. So we have some updated numbers for this evening. So right now, an updated level service budget, it's up there, updated LS, is an increase of $815,650, which is a 3.5% increase. The town's proposal has not changed. So the town is still proposing a 2.5% increase. So we have a distinction between, we're saying to level service, and we need a 3.5% increase. The town right now is offering a 2.5% increase. That level service shortfall is $234,985. What's changed in the last couple of weeks is we've had some movement in staff. We've had a retirement. So we've had some retirements officially happen within the district. And so staff movement can change the numbers. And we also, if you go back one slide, Meredith, okay, where it says para non-replacements 44,000. We, as part of our level service budget, we did an analysis of our para needs throughout the district. And we determined that we could meet all the needs of our students with a reduction of 2.5 paraprofessionals. No actual para would be reduced. This would happen through attrition. And so this would happen through, we actually have some people in long-term sub positions right now. So this proposal is not identifying any particular para position and telling any specific paraprofessional that their position is on the list to be reduced. So this is going to happen naturally, but it's a $44,000 savings. So it was in parentheses in this presentation. It had not been taken off the shortfall yet. As of tonight's presentation, that is taken off of the shortfall. As with our additional retirements, that got us from the 3.9% down to the 3.5%. That got us to that new number on the next page, Meredith, of $234,985. We also went back to talk about additions. In our last presentation, we talked about adding K-paras. We talked about adding technology support for tech devices, a part-time position. And we also talked about adding a technology teacher. So obviously when there's looking at that, our shortfall and where we are and what we want to make is a fair proposal that we believe is going to move us in the right direction, we're reducing our ask for increases. Right now, I'm making a proposal that we reduce our ask for increases to only the technology teacher at the middle high school. So this presentation, the numbers we're going to talk about, is going to add a full-time technology teacher. That number of 75,918 is based on salary and benefits for that position. We took an average salary and added that in. We didn't take a low-end salary. We didn't take a top-of-the-scale salary. We figured that if we're going to bring in a technology teacher to start a technology engineering program at the middle high school, that most likely that person is going to have some experience and expertise. It actually is not, if you look at college preparation programs aren't developing technology engineering teachers specifically for that role to come in and run that at a middle high school. But they are elementary teachers or English teachers or math teachers. So we just figured this is a position that we have to put a little bit of a salary to it. We have to have someone with some experience, because I think there's been some concern about where that number came from. That number was in the last presentation too, the 75,918 for a technology teacher. So that's an average salary plus benefits. So if we add that on to our level service shortfall, so shortfall plus middle high school technology teacher puts us at $310,903. So that's the number we're working with tonight. So what we said was, if going on that concept that the end result, the worst case scenario, is that the final voted budget is the town's number, what would we have to reduce to meet that 310,903? And those are the positions we're going to discuss tonight as proposals to the school committee. And the first slide is just the positions, and then I'm going to talk about, from my perspective, the impacts of the reductions of those positions. And so the first slide will just be the list of the positions, and then we'll get into the details of each one. So to meet that shortfall of 310,903, the positions we're proposing this evening for reduction to the school committee would be Director of Literacy, district-wide administrative position, middle high school French teacher, middle high school special education teacher in the CAP-TAP program, 0.5 middle high school art teacher, 0.5 speech and language assistant, which is a district-wide position. So we'll start getting into the impacts of those proposed reductions. Director of Literacy, elimination of Director of Literacy position in the district would cause a restructuring and reduction of reading services and curriculum oversight for reading service at the elementary school. Currently, we have 3 reading specialists who serve about 160 students in small groups on a daily basis. We would restructure to create 2 reading specialists, 1 reading specialist / reading coach, which would cause some reduction in intervention services. We want to maintain some level of curriculum oversight and support in terms of all the reading initiatives we're running at the elementary school by having a reading coach who would be a teaching position. It would be a restructure of one of those current reading positions. What that would mean for students is it would have a little bit of a reduction of intervention services. So right now we have 3 reading specialists who are providing intervention services. That's their job. They provide intervention services. Now we'd have 2.5, and the 0.5 is a little bit of a guesstimate. We'd have to look at the needs of the kids. We'd have to look at all the data that the reading specialists and the reading teachers look at to make a decision on who receives those services with teachers. So there's a lot of discussion working with teachers and reading specialists on who receives intervention services. So we're going to have to look at what that is. You know, we're saying 0.5, maybe it's 0.6 intervention, maybe it's 0.4 intervention based on the needs of the kids. So it would, instead of being 3 reading specialists solely providing intervention services, it would be 2 reading specialists doing that, and then 1 reading specialist being a reading specialist intervention for students, and then also helping to oversee the implementation of the program that we lose by eliminating the Director of Literacy position. What this does do, it does move us further away from the educational plan that was the foundation of the design of the new school. The new school was development of the new school and the educational plan for the new school was based on the RTI model of response to intervention, providing intervention services for students. And we're saying that this would result in some less direct intervention for students in need. So that would be a reduction through the elimination of that position. On the administrative side, so the Director of Literacy does have several district-wide administrative functions. They are the ELL director. So that position ELL director would have to go to a different position. Right now, the proposal would be for the Director of Curriculum to take over that role. Right now, our ELL students, we've gone from 2 years ago, we had 2 ELL students in the district, to last year 12, to this year 24. So we currently have 24 ELL students. So being the LL director is a job. That person is responsible for 2 staff members that they're working with. They're responsible for ensuring all the testing of those students. They're responsible for implementation and oversight to make sure the students receive all the services that they need. And I think that that's going to continue to grow. I think we're going to go, as I said, we've gone from 2 to 14 to 24. And the years before that, we were we were stagnant between 2 and 10. I think maybe sometimes, I think I saw Michelle here, maybe we got as high as 10 or 12, and then we faded back a little bit. But all of a sudden, we've exploded to 24 ELL students within the district, and I think that's going to continue to grow. So that administrative responsibility is going to have to shift, and it is a district-wide responsibility. We have EL students in both the middle high school and the elementary school. So that will have to shift to another administrator. Oversight of Title I. I didn't put a position here because we haven't necessarily made a decision of who would maintain that oversight of Title I, but that is an administrative responsibility that would have to go to somebody. Observations and evaluations. The reality is we do have an evaluation observation system, and having one less administrator means those observations and evaluations have to move to other administrators, most likely elementary administrators and the director of curriculum instruction and technology. And then also the director of literacy does a lot of professional development within the district. So those professional development responsibilities would have to fall to other administrators in the district, including myself. My intention would be, if this was to go forward, I would take the lead in the professional development committee, and then other professional development responsibilities would fall to other administrators within the district. So those are our overall summary impacts for the elimination of the director of literacy. The French position. The French position is really an elimination of a program long term. And obviously that's a huge concern. So it would lead to the elimination of the French program at the middle high school. It would transition us to a 1 foreign language school. There are other high schools that are 1 foreign language. There's not many. Most high schools will offer more than 1 foreign language. On average, it's probably 2. Some larger schools may offer 3 or 4 languages. There are schools our size that offer 1. I can provide the committee a list in the future of the schools that do. They are out there. They are in our area that have 1 foreign language. This year, there are 68 students enrolled in French classes at the middle high school. We've done some preliminary numbers for next year. So students have just finished course registration. And as of right now, 77 students have signed up for French classes next year. 14 in French 1, 17 in French 2, 13 in French 3, 21 in French 4, and 12 in French 5. 4-year college is required 2 years of a foreign language. Most recommend 3. Your competitive colleges and universities are looking for 4+ years and or AP language. Obviously the ultimate goal here would be to not reduce positions and not eliminate French. But if we ended up in that position, I put this up here because I would really advocate us to find a way somehow to transition this through a 0.5 position. What that would look like is if we were able to maintain a 0.5 French position, we could run our current programs for our current French 2, 3, 4 students. So you could offer next year French 3, French 4, French 5. That allows those students to finish out their program and have those courses that they need when they're applying for colleges to have that French 4 and 5 on their transcript. And then after that, if this reduction was made, there would probably be a discussion of having that, hopefully that 0.5 position maybe transition to Spanish, because we're going to need the support in Spanish because it's going to force everybody to take Spanish for their foreign language. So we need additional staff there. So that right now this is on as a full reduction. We're going to talk about at the end. There's some ways this could change, and maybe if this is changed, or if we have the ability to have this change or go in a different direction, we'd look to go to a transition out of French, and if we ended up in that direction. Maybe that's the wrong way to phrase it. But in essence, that wouldn't just be a cut. It wouldn't be just straight French no longer exists at the middle high school. I don't know if you guys want to stop along the way or go through the whole thing and ask questions at the end. Just go all the way. Keep going? Go through them. All right. Special education teacher. impact of proposed reductions. So it would require us to restructure our current alternative programs at the middle high school. Right now we have 4 alternative programs. We have the MAP program, the Middle School Assistance Program. We have the GAP program, the Graduation Assistance Program. We have the CAP program. You can see a theme in terms of our naming of these programs, which is the Carver Alternative Program. And we have the TAP program, the Transition Assistance Program. And I just wanted to give some numbers as background, because ultimately the goal would be here is there's a belief, there's a possibility that these programs could be restructured using the remaining staff if a special education teacher was reduced and still offer all the same services for students. You'd have one less person to offer those services, but the goal would be to maintain the services. We're not looking to eliminate the services. So just looking at staffing. Currently, the MAP program has 1 special education teacher, a shared adjustment counselor, 2 paraprofessionals. They service 9 students, 7 of which are on IEPs. The GAP program has 1 special education teacher, same shared adjustment counselor as the MAP program, 1 paraprofessional that services 9 students, 3 of which are on IEPs. The CAP-TAP program has 1 special education teacher, currently a 0.8 adjustment counselor, and 1 paraprofessional, which is currently servicing 12 students, 8 in the CAP side of the program and 4 on the TAP side of the program. Now, their number, all these numbers shift a little bit during the year based on the needs of the students. As referenced by some of the CAP and TAP students who presented tonight, and some of our former graduates, is that number, that class shifts a little bit more. The Transition Assistance Program, the idea is these students are going to transition back into school. So those students have had possibly a hospitalization, some social emotional concerns that's led them to be out of school for a period of time. They're transitioning back into their full-time schedule, so they're in the program for a period of time with the goal of returning to the regular classes. So that always creates a little, there's always going to be some shift in your TAP students because that's the goal. The goal is for them to transition effectively back into their regular schedule or some version of their regular schedule. The CAP students are more, it is an alternative pathway. It's an alternative pathway to get students to graduation. We had 2 students here this evening who talked about how that was very successful for them in terms of helping them reach graduation. And I'm so happy that you came, and I appreciate you being here, and I appreciate your comments. They were well stated. You just did a really nice job. And we're saying that when we looked at district-wide, as I said, none of these things are good choices. We said with the staff we have, we think we can offer similar programs and meet the students' needs with a reduced staff. So again, this is not a proposal to eliminate the CAP-TAP program so that it no longer exists. Okay? And so what staff's remaining if we restructured the way is listed here? We'd have 2 special education teachers. We are talking about the 0.8 adjustment counselor would become a full-time adjustment counselor. So it would be 2 full-time adjustment counselors and 4 paraprofessionals to meet the needs of right now 30 students, knowing that those 30 students are always shifting. And as of right now, 18 of those 30 students are on IEPs. So if you look at even the IEP load, 2 special education students, 9 students each, may not balance out that way exactly. We believe that there's we believe that staffing could maintain the programs and offer similar services. So I just want to be real clear. This is not a proposal to eliminate the CAP or TAP program. That is not the proposal. So moving on to the 0.5, our teacher at the middle high school. Currently we have 46 students, 9 through 12 enrolled in our classes. Projected enrollment from last year from the early presentation is 68 students. Ultimately, the impact here is we're going to reduce our offerings of high school electives. So we're going to have, there would be a reduction of number of electives that we could offer for high school students in art. The 0.5 position would teach 6 sections or 3 classes each half of the year. So one half of the year 3, other half of the year another 3, which would be a total of 6. Looking at this current student enrollment and looking at the projected student enrollment, we believe we could offer the classes that students have currently signed up for with the .5 teacher in 6 sections. Obviously that's it reduces our ability to grow over time, but within the 6 sections, there is the possibility of enrolling the 68 students who have right now signed up for an art class for next year. Now, those are always early numbers. That shifts a little bit as you start talking to kids. Some kids have to fill their schedules. There's a lot of movement there. So the numbers I'm presenting tonight are based solely on what students have selected through the course selection process. Guidance counselors haven't met with students and parents yet. That process is still ongoing, but it's the numbers we have today. So we had to use those as a basis. And then last one, impact of the .5 speech and language assistant. Current position supports the services of 3 speech language pathologists who each have caseloads of 55 to 70 students. Service delivery for the reduced .5 position would be at the elementary school only. So our thought process would be the assistant, if it were reduced to .5, would focus their supports pre-K through 1 or 2. And ultimately, all that means is that it would be an increased load for the 3 full-time speech and language pathologists in the district. Right now we have 4 people providing those services for close to 200 students who require some level of speech service, from maybe a couple times a week to once a week to consultancy, to now having 3.5 people to meet those needs, which obviously that affects the ability to meet the needs of all those students across the district. When we looked at these positions, like I said, none of this was easy, and you had concerns in terms of if we went into classroom teachers. And obviously there's people here who are classroom teachers, but if you start 4th grade or 3rd grade or science or social studies, that when you started really looking at some of those numbers where those courses would be reduced, we'd start looking at really large class sizes. Someone here mentioned social studies. I think in maybe Jane's presentation, she mentioned social studies. So I will say we looked at social studies a little bit in terms of numbers, and we started to see that if there was a reduction of a social studies teacher at the middle high school, there were going to be a couple classes at 30 or 31 students, and there was probably going to be a grade level that was going to have an average class size of 30. So when we started balancing out, looking at some of those reductions, we were going to start any cut to just a grade level teacher, grade 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or English, math, science, social studies. The class size that was going to cause this was going to be really problematic. And that played a factor into some of our decisions we looked at in terms of some of the things that are being proposed here this evening. So how could this change? Things are still in play. So as I said, since January, our shortfall has gotten smaller. There are opportunities between now and March 11th. There are opportunities between now and town meeting for our shortfall to get smaller. What are those opportunities? Health insurance premium increase could be reduced. So right now we're part of the Gateway Healthcare system. They are telling each of the towns involved in that system, that consortium, to budget a 9% increase in health insurance costs. They don't finalize that number until next week. There's a meeting actually Wednesday. So there's a meeting on Wednesday, the 27th this week. We believe there's a chance that they're going to come to that meeting on Wednesday and say that they would change their recommendation of budgeting a 9% increase to an 8% increase. A 1% reduction saves the district $30,000. So if on Wednesday we find out that the health insurance rate that we need to budget for next year is 8%, we'd have an additional $30,000 in savings. School choice. I am going to make a proposal on March 11th to the school committee that we consider opening up school choice grades 6 through 12 at Carver Middle High School. We've opened up school choice this year in grades 6, 7, 8, and 9. And school choice has been a positive for us financially. Currently right now, we have 36 students who school choice into the district, and we have 8 students who are school choicing out. So it's a net positive to us. I believe if we open enrollment for school choice for grades 10, 11, and 12, this year we were 6 through 9. If we opened up 10, 11, and 12, that would give an opportunity to bring more school choice money into the district, which would allow us to use some of our some of that school choice money to offset the budget. So I will make a proposal in the March meeting to do that. And that could also obviously have an impact. So if the school committee made a decision to open up a school choice for grades 6 through 12, we would have a budget proposal that would reduce the shortfall. So those two things, both the health insurance premium and if the school committee makes a decision to adopt school choice throughout the district, well, I'm sorry, that was a misstatement, not throughout the district, for grades 6 through 12, that would decrease our shortfall. There's always the possibility of additional staff movements and changes. Those things can happen at any time. Right now we're not projecting anything, but there's always opportunities for staff changes. So in the next week or two, there could be staff movement that could change our numbers. And then long term, and this really isn't for this year. I don't see this being a benefit for it this year, but I know that there's been a lot of discussion about increasing funding from the state, and there's a bunch of different proposals out there in terms of doing that. We've talked about that at previous meetings. We have the governor's proposal, which is putting more money in Chapter 78, though that doesn't provide a lot of support for Carver. We would receive the minimum aid of $20 per student, which is about $32,000. There is the Promise Act, which is being supported by the MTA. That would also increase Chapter 70 funding. The governor's budget does it over, I think, $200 billion over 7 years. The Promise Act is around that number over 5 years. Right now, though, both of those pieces of legislation would not have a huge change for Carver this year, because both would have us just receiving the minimum aid of $20 per student. That's already factored into our budget, so that minimum aid increase is all part of this. But the reason why I bring it up is, there's been concerns that the governor's budget proposal is not helping all districts. And even this weekend, the Senate appointed a new head of the Education Committee, a new chairman, and his name is Jason Lewis of Winchester. And he was out speaking this weekend saying, we need to pass a budget that funds Chapter 70 so that all districts benefit. And was making a strong statement that the governor's budget is not good enough because there's 150 districts that just get the minimum aid. We are one of those districts. So Jason Lewis, as the new chairperson of the Senate Education Committee, is saying we need every district to benefit from whatever change we make in terms of funding education within the state. The Massachusetts Association of School Committees and the Massachusetts Association of School Superintendents are making a big push that every district needs to benefit from increased funding from the state beyond the minimum aid. I don't know what that will translate into. So I can't make any promises, and I don't think we can act on that as a committee and say, well, we believe we might get an additional $100,000 in aid, so we'll take that into consideration. I think that would be unrealistic. But I do believe there's a movement in the state to look at how education is being funded, to change it, and to change it in a way that's beneficial for every district in Massachusetts. And long term, that will be beneficial for Carver, though we may not see that come to fruition until next year or the year after or the year after. But I feel like we're seeing more and more signs that there's support out there to make sure that every district, every community, every town in Massachusetts would benefit from any kind of change in education funding at the state level. So that's where we are today. We'll come back on March 11th and give an update in terms of where we are. That time we'll know the health insurance number. That will be a set number. That time we'll know if the school committee is going to decide to make a decision to vote on school choice, and we'll be able to set a number on that. Both of those things I think will have the ability to reduce our shortfall, and then we'll go from there.
Questions?
You guys can go first.
I just had a couple. In your suggestions here, recommendations, have you spoken to the existing speech and language pathologist that would remain, and the, let me see, well, to see if actually they could handle the caseload
See,
without the assistant?
So obviously, we've had the people whose positions are on the list this evening, we've had conversations with. And we've also asked our Director of Special Education, Karen Tykert, specifically with speech and language, to make that determination. She has been in contact with the staff. She has spoken to them and gotten their feedback on whether it's sustainable. Karen, as Director of Special Education, is supporting this as something that could be possibly sustainable.
So for both
Again-
Patty and the Cap and Tap
yes.
program as well?
Yes.
So they've gotten, well, I shouldn't say positive feedback.
Well,
feedback that-
no, I don't
that's
think we get any,
possible.
I don't think the feedback, I don't mean this to be difficult.
Yeah.
The feedback from the staff is going to be, we cannot reduce any positions.
Yeah,
I think the staff has made a very clear presentation this evening that
Yeah.
their feedback's going to be, we cannot and should not reduce any
My
positions.
question was, though, basically is, were the people that are gonna be left spoken to?
Yeah.
This all this being a
Yes.
reality?
Yes.
That, okay. That was my question.
Yeah.
Sorry if I
Sorry.
didn't word it the right way, yeah.
And it also goes back to the conversation of our position of, we don't think any of these things are good cuts.
Right.
We're just saying if we had to meet the town's number and we make a decision, or the town makes a decision that we have to meet the town's number, or the school committee makes a decision we have to meet the town's number, this is what we investigated and looked at and said, this is we feel is going to have the least impact on students. All these cuts are going to have impact on students.
Right.
So we just try to say what's going to have the least impact.
That's just the reason I asked, because if there was a outspoken adverse effect of, didn't think that it could be handled, I'd love to hear that, just as we've heard from the students here tonight. And these are questions that we have to consider being on this committee, so.
Andy, you're right, and there's a woman right here who would like to say something.
It's not up to me, it's
No,
up to
no,
the chairman.
we're not
Yeah.
going to get into that right now, though. Please,
But
thank
yeah.
you. I appreciate it, but
I'm not just anybody, I am one of the speakers.
Right.
I know it.
I
But
mean,
that's not the purpose of this meeting tonight.
Sorry if yeah.
Well, that might be true. He did ask a question.
No, but I think.
Chairman, Bo, it's.
Right, but I think, but I think the position is, so obviously we're agreeing that the staff right now is going to say that none of these positions should be reduced or eliminated. And so, and what actually, if we look at the Cap and Tap program, I think I made a clear statement that our position is we're not looking to reduce the Cap or Tap program. That program would exist if these reductions were made. I think I clearly stated that program would still exist and the services would be provided by this current staff. Now, people may disagree that can't happen. I understand that. I'm trying to say this without, it's not derogatory to any individual program or any individual person. I could come up, if we go back, and James, you can cut me off, obviously, if you want me to, but if you go back to the 310, Meredith, go back to slide with the 310,000 on it as our shortfall, the one back up. Yeah. As I said in the beginning, there's no good decisions here. I could put different positions on this list for the 310,000, and the people in those positions would say, we can't do that. So I'm not trying, that's why I don't know if it would be valuable to say, the speech language pathologists say, we can't do that. The CAP-TAP program says we can't do that. The English teachers say we can't do that. The grade 2 teachers say we can't do that. The social studies teachers say we can't do that. Because no matter what positions were on that list to meet that shortfall, they're all going to have impacts. And I'm not making a statement they were not. No one's making a statement that they wouldn't have impacts. We, as the administrative team, looked and evaluated to the best of our ability all of these positions and said these ones we have the least impact when looked from the global perspective. And so I think that's more the point of it. So I'm not saying that we're not trying to diminish you and say that you don't have a voice. And I don't mean to pick you out specifically, but or any of those things. Is ultimately we're saying that there's no good decisions here.
Right.
as I understand it, with that 310, that includes adding a tech teacher, correct?
It does, correct.
Okay, so I mean, I think that's wonderful. Enrichment is always a great idea, but I guess I'm confused as to why you would be looking at enriching when you're also eliminating what the potential. It's my primary concern, but I think the same thing,
No.
if you can go to the next slide, where it looks at what each position, the amount of money, I don't know if somebody can get that over to the next slide.
So the format of this is that we have a meeting right now to discuss the budget. And there was a time for public comment, and we did allow that, and we are not trying to stifle anybody's voice right now. Because there's not anyone that's going to sit out there, as Mr. Neef said, and say something that cutting this is going to be okay. It's going to work out. We understand that aspect. I would appreciate if you would let the committee finish their discussion, because that is the format of the meeting. And we're not going to vote at all. And once that window is open of one person speaking, it is not fair in any way to not open it up to everybody. And that time has happened. So it's not meant to be rude or disrespectful in any way, but this is our committee meeting and it's a committee discussion.
And I'll also let you know, I do actually have that down as one of my questions, so I think it will get answered, so.
Thank you.
Stephanie.
I hope that people will come to our March 11th meeting and make notes of the questions that you guys have tonight, and please bring them back so that you can ask them and we
Agreed.
can try to answer them to the best of our ability. None of us are comfortable with this. None of us. We're all sick over it. And we appreciate you being here. I appreciate that the numbers are shifting. So far, they're shifting in a positive direction, and we need to hope that they'll continue to shift that way. And if they don't, then we'll have to do what we have to do at our next meeting and then see what happens at town meeting. So we appreciate your support and, thank you for being here. And please continue to advocate. And thank you for the update.
So I got a few. So I'll start with the question about technology and the add-on. And I worded it this way, that we were taking away a language and we were adding technology. And I was just wanted you to get the opportunity to speak to why, when you guys were going through it, that type of movement was made.
Obviously, we'd love to have the opportunity to keep both. Ultimately, we feel like a hole in the curriculum. Not enrichment. A hole in the curriculum at the middle high school is we do not offer any technology or engineering programming. And the reality is, I think that's the direction in which our career workforce is going. And this goes into a much larger, and it's hard for me to summarize. I could go back to our presentation from last meeting where I think we had about a 45-minute presentation about career pathways. I don't think it would be appropriate for me to revisit the whole career pathways presentation. But ultimately, the summary of that presentation was, and actually DESE financially is going to support the development of 3 high-quality college and career pathways. They're called innovation pathways, early college pathways, and vocational educational pathways. The technology and engineering position would fall under an innovation pathway in which we're providing students a set of skills that's going to prepare them for both college and career. And as I said, as we look at our curriculum within the district, we feel that that's a hole that we don't offer that. Now, interestingly enough, for our pathways, when we've just begun this, we're actually making a vision for a different looking high school. And this is the very beginning, this is the starting point for that vision of a different looking high school in terms of curriculum services we want to offer. And what we're talking about doing is creating a visual and performing arts pathway, a business pathway, a hospitality services pathway, a wellness and municipal services pathway. And this is in alignment with what the state's asking us to do. We actually believe that there's a lot of talent within our building to put these pathways in place and to give kids more direction. And the concept of the whole pathway discussion is, the idea is we want to give students real life practical skills that they're prepared to make that transition after high school, because there's a concern, and this concern is at the state level, at the national level, that there are too many students who leave high school without a real solid direct path in which way they want to go. And our goal is to try to build that up and give our students a good direction of a way they want to go. And we actually, like I said, we believe we have the staff within our building to do this. As the example we already gave, we've started talking about programming. Right now at the high school level, we don't offer very limited programming options for our students. I think that's a disservice. I think the reality is if you're going into any kind of engineering, computer science field, having some beginning of programming backgrounding is essential. And so our math department has taken on that challenge. Our math department is saying we have the expertise within our current math teachers to begin offering programming to our students. We started that this year in the 8th grade, and we're going to build on that next year. That's the beginning of a pathway towards developing students to have a set of skills that are marketable. We believe that the technology and engineering piece, as I said, it just doesn't exist at the high school right now. And that's concerning. I don't know if that's adequately really preparing our students for the future, and that we have a responsibility to do that. And that adding the technology and engineering teacher is a key component in terms of building that program out. And is going to, so as I said, I don't want to go off and just represent the whole Pathways presentation, but our concept is we really are starting to form a vision for how we can use all of our current staff to better prepare students for both career and college. And the technology and engineering teacher, we believe, is a key component of that. And sometimes you have to look at the programs you're offering and saying, maybe the programs you're offering need to be shifted a little bit. Maybe there needs to be some adjustment in the programs we're offering to best meet the needs of our students. So, yes, right now the administration, myself as the superintendent, is making a proposal that adds a technology and engineering teacher, which I realize increases our shortfall. Which if we don't come to an agreement and then we end up with the town's number, could cause other reductions or changes in offerings. I don't know if I would play specifically French versus technology and engineering.
The numbers.
But we also when we looked at programs, we looked at the numbers of students who were involved in those programs. And our art numbers have been low for the last 4 or 5 years. Our French numbers have been low. So I'm not saying we want to make a trade-off, but if we had to make a trade-off, that might be a position where we look.
Do we have for year one with this technology initiative a vision of the impact, like how many classes this person would have?
Yeah, it's going to be a full teacher. We're going to have to offer electives. We're going to have to. Then now that's going to be a build-up process.
25 to a class. 20. What's the hope? I just want to see.
No,
the vision,
I don't.
The impact.
Realistically, we're not going to say we're going to have 25 students in all the technology engineering classes.
How many
next
are
year.
there in usual classes of technology?
Probably looking at 15 to 20.
15 to 20. Okay, so 15 to 20, and the person has 4 to 5 classes.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And just to feed into that too, Andrew, the hope would be to deter a couple students going from Old Colony. Old Colony takes roughly 90 to 92 kids from us at 13,000 per student. So think about it. If you're able to deter 6 kids, the teacher covers itself. The class covers itself. So it's not to say we're going to grab all kids from Old Colony back, but if we can offer a program, you can see how quickly that adds up.
Yeah, I was just looking at the student impact and seeing the numbers. That's all. If I'm looking at school choice for next meeting, can I use for easy math 30K?
We've built up enough balance now that we pretty much have a full year to the good, which is always the goal with all our reserve accounts, or revolving accounts, I should say. And we can extend on beyond that if we really want to. We can roll the dice on that because we do have that.
So if we
buffer.
extended 6 to 12, would we be able to add an additional 30?
50 grand is probably a
Say
safe
50?
estimate, yeah.
That's the number we've been talking about.
Okay.
And again, if we have a $20,000 gap, let's say we're only taking 30, we're able to offset that
Yep.
with our money that we
Okay.
have on an account.
The .5 French position that we kind of talked about, that would be an additional 36K, right, to the budget? Because right now
I
we're
have to go back
factoring
to the
71 out,
numbers. Yeah, half of the
so
71.
we'd be adding back in 36.
Correct. That would be adding.
That would allow the people that are currently enrolled in it to see their way through.
Correct. That would allow our students currently in French 2, 3, and 4 to take French 3, 4, and 5 next year.
Okay. Okay. The CAP program. Okay, so I think I kind of see where the gray area, not gray, that's the wrong word. I can see where the confusion kind of is. So when we say that the program will continue on from your point of view, it's saying that everyone that is currently enrolled would be able to stay in district, right? Is that really?
Yeah, our intention would not be to eliminate
But
this program to have students go out of district.
Exactly, but
Correct.
is your
Yes.
belief that the quality would be to the standard that we're, or close to, that we're currently at?
Obviously, always having one less person is going to
I
make it
understand
harder.
that, but what I'm getting at is,
So I don't want to diminish that having one less person will make it harder. But yes, we believe that
Okay.
the program, the CAP program as is currently constituted and the services offered to those students can be offered with the staff that we have of 2 special education teachers, 2 full-time adjustment counselors, and 4 paraprofessionals.
okay, thank you for the clarification.
So we are not proposing the elimination of the CAP program.
Okay.
But what about behaviors? You
All right.
social, emotional, behavioral children, and you're gonna do one less staff? They're running across the lawn, like they have, or shoving each other in a cabinet. Have you ever done special ed?
So is all I would say again, please, is that this is not the format, but it is important, and I do understand that. I do. But this is just he is merely making a suggestion.
No, I know.
Tonight's whole presentation is merely a suggestion to this committee at what we would have to do to meet the shortfall. It is not our plan. It is not necessarily what's going to happen. And honestly, on the 11th, when we actually vote, that is the night to be here, to make sure that we are accountable for the vote that we make. Because that is the night that we need to do that. I think this is all important. Every piece of it. And I don't care what anybody says, there's no way to give the same service when you lose people. And everybody in here knows that this staff is already at bare minimum.
But special ed is not where you're.
I understand.
That's dangerous.
I understand. Brad, could you go to, actually, you're on the slide I'd like to see. This is the slide that you presented at the last meeting at what to add. Slightly modified through the town's
One up,
proposal.
One up, that one.
Yep,
Yeah,
that one.
That one.
Okay. In November, or whenever we presented, there was a far different level service, actually level service that was presented. What was that number?
It was 9,
It's up in the first slide, Meredith.
it was 987,000 was the January 14th level service.
And that would be adding the fifth grade teacher back, adding the
No,
position.
that was just straight level service.
That was straight level.
No, I'm talking about when you made a presentation,
We
while ago.
made a presentation in November,
yes.
which I don't believe we actually put a number to. It had a large number of positions.
Of all the positions.
There was a 5-year plan of positions we felt we needed
To
to be
meet
back.
level service. So when we talk level service, we're not really talking level service anyway.
Though that meeting was not, that presentation was not about level service. That'd be beyond level service, what we'd like to see.
With that first one, what we'd like to see to add to build.
What we're defining as level service is bringing back all the staff who currently work for us and all the positions that currently work for us. So we're saying in January, that level service was a 4.25% increase in our budget. And now we're saying it's 3.9, because as we talked about, things change. That was solidify some numbers, and now we're down to a 3.5% increase. But that would bring back everyone who's currently employed without adding any positions, including the technology position we've been talking about. And that shortfall is 234 right now. 234, 985, 235.
But still not technically level service to what we would need to meet the expectation of what we have.
Well, this is getting definition of level service. Level service is, we're defining level service.
everything we've got, don't
Keep
lose
everything we
anyone.
got.
Right.
Before we get to level service. We talked about saying long-term visioning, that whole concept of we need to lay out, we believe we need to grow. And if we were going to grow, these are the places we needed to grow. And we actually listed out several positions over 3 to 5 years, saying this is the direction we want to grow. I don't believe, I can go back, I can pull it up. I don't believe we actually put a number on that at the time.
It's not really even growth, it's restoration.
Exactly.
Both. Some would be restoration, some would be growth.
Some would be adaptive
Some would be
growth
different
to-
positions, because positions change, needs change. And that's sort of our discussion with the technology position, is saying that sometimes needs change. So some of them would be restoration of positions that have been eliminated. Some would be totally new positions that didn't exist in the district 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 years ago. I can look at that November, but I don't believe we put a number
I
on
guess
it.
to my point, though, is that we're at bare minimum as it is, and we're looking at restructuring, cutting, however you want to define it, bare minimum, to a place where, although services may be kept, it's been clearly stated, there's no way to maintain the same quality when you reduce what's there. And I think that this committee needs to give a really hard thought to what the town is offering and what level service actually means to the needs of our schools. Because it's misconceived. I think if you would go to the last slide, please, that those solutions are something to rely on. That for all of you sitting here, that teachers' salaries are the problems in this town. There's no one on this board that believes that. Health insurance is the problem, right? That's what's killing us. Special education and the lack of funding from the state is the problem. That's what's killing us. But we can't rely on those things to change to fix it. Because everybody that talks about that talks about 3-4 years down the road. And that doesn't fix today. And I think what we're looking for and what we're asking for, when you look at the actual numbers, great. Maybe if these things come through, like that reduction in health insurance and that long-term increased funding from the state, we can start rebuilding those pieces that we haven't been able to have. But to rely on them to get us through that level service isn't a way to manage what we're doing. It's too scattered and it's too hard.
And the only thing I would add on to what you're saying, James, which we've mentioned in other meetings, we've mentioned continually, haven't mentioned tonight, I didn't put them on the slide. And ultimately, the town needs to increase its revenue resources. The town needs to bring in more money in revenue, and I know the Board of Selectmen always acknowledge that and say they need to find ways to bring in more revenue. And ultimately, in terms of our point of advocacy at the state level, we really need full funding of circuit breaker, and we need full funding of charter school reimbursement. That would have a more direct impact on our budget this year or next year or the year after than what's being proposed in terms of changes in Chapter 70. So fully funding circuit breaker, fully funding charter school reimbursement, and the town increasing their revenue resources, those would have the most advantageous effect on our budget situation on a year-to-year basis, including next year. And those needs to be our point of advocacy with our own state legislators, beyond increasing funding for Chapter 70.
And just one number I want to point out on that charter school piece is, right now FY20's projection is 46.4 students out for next school year. All right, the net cost to the district for next year is $624,000. That's right out of our money that we do not get. So realistic, when you think about it, if you take 46 kids, spread them out through, let's say, 6 through 12 that we have charter schools, you don't have to add a teacher on at all. If everything works out right, they're able to just massage themselves in across the district, and we recoup $624,000 back to our budget. That's a real issue.
But how many students right now are looking to go to Old Colony? I mean, every year, how many students apply to go to Old Colony?
A little separate, yeah. Old Colony, though, we have anywhere from 90 to 95 on a yearly basis.
And I know we've been a little scattered on this conversation, but even the whole concept of developing the career pathways and the adding of the technology component, although part of the goal on that as well is to try to build programs that are going to retain students within the district. So we want to see less students going to charter schools, possibly less students going to Old Colony. Mm-hmm. You know, we're never going to be able to offer everything Old Colony offers. We're not expecting that we're going to have the 25 kids who go to Old Colony all stay here. I mean, I don't think that's realistic in terms of, but if we can get a couple of those kids back and have fewer students going to charter schools, that could be a huge benefit for us. And the state funding charter school reimbursement. The reality is the state has a formula for how they reimburse charter schools that they don't fund. So they say this is how we reimburse districts who lose students to charter schools, but then they don't fund that. So that's problematic.
You said on slide 4, the town's proposed 2.5 hasn't changed, but initially it was 1.7.
So, yeah, if you go back a
That's
couple.
the town policy,
Yeah, if you go
right?
back a couple of years ago, what the town was projecting for its revenue increase for the schools was 1.7%. And we've always actually done a little bit better than that. I think last year was 2.1. The town did shift some revenue, a small amount of revenue from, so one of the things we've been advocating for is some money coming out of capital and moving into operational budgets. The town has shifted all new growth, which used to go directly to capital, to operating budgets. That amount is $55,000 or $60,000 this year. So they have shifted $60,000 to operational budgets, which we received 70% of. So that did increase our budget by 40 some odd $1,000. And the town has also had some increases in revenues. So ultimately, 2 years ago, they were projecting for 10 years a 1.7% increase. Now this year we're getting 2.5, and their new town projection is 2.1, 2.2 for the 10 years.
It's 2.
2.
Flat 2.
So the town, in the past year, the town has brought in more revenue. So they have made a very small movement in that direction. We need it to be a larger movement. We need the town to continue to bring in more revenue, increase their revenue resources, and possibly move money out of capital into operating budgets. But they have made a movement in that direction in the past year.
Yeah, I mean, you're really hitting it, but again, the town needs to do more to bring revenue in. And that's a no, and they're working on that. But again, that's one of those 3 to 4 to 5 year plans that aren't going to affect right now. As a taxpayer in a town that relies on residential taxes to pay with funding, an $815,000 increase just to meet level service is a lot. That's a big increase to hit, and that's not even getting us what we need. So this committee needs to give some serious thought to what the presentation is going to be and what our request is going to be when we decide to vote a final budget. The Board of Selectmen have moved the town meeting date to wait for our vote. And I don't know how we're cutting positions to get to a place that puts us in a better place.
You mind if I said something
Yeah,
before we
please.
left for discussion? First of all, I just wanted to apologize to the committee for not being clear earlier, and to the audience for suggesting that that we break format and anybody could just speak out. I didn't mean for us to get away from our format. There's no disrespect to the committee, and I'm sorry if I was unclear. I think you're right. I think we need to have as much information as we can before our next meeting. So in that, I hope you don't mind me saying that at the very least, if you go to the carver.org website and go on the committee page, you could email us your concerns. At least we could read them, before our next meeting. So that's one thing we could do, I guess. But I didn't mean to, like I said, I didn't mean to get us off track, and I apologize for that.
Andy, I mean, I step out doing this, but I wouldn't mind if there is anybody at the end of our meeting who wants to add an extra comment, and not a conversation to add on to that, but wants to put something in to give you the opportunity to do that. I'd request that you keep it short when we're done with our discussion, and it's not involved for a conversation, but your input is helpful to what we do. When I said that earlier, I meant that sincerely. We have to sit up here and make decisions that are very difficult to make, and we don't have all the answers. We're just parents. I'm a teacher. I teach 5th grade. I'm around kids on IEPs every day. I've been doing it for 17 years now. I love my job. I love what I do. And I love children. So to think that my children, who are in the middle school, in the 6th and 8th grade, in the middle of all of this, that I would want to take anything away from them is ridiculous as well. But these are difficult decisions to try and figure out how to make all this work. The town has helped us build a new school. The town has put $250,000 in a reserve fund for education so that when our special ed funds run short, we have a reserve fund. They also put $250,000 in an insurance fund. So when our insurance fluctuates and changes, there's money there to rely on. It's hard to go to the town and say, you're not doing anything, give us more, when they are doing a lot for the schools. They are. But there's money to cover things that we need to do. And we need to figure out the best plan to make that happen. And cuts should not be part of that because we're at a bare minimum. And as all we do is make the job harder for the people that are trying to take care of our kids. Everybody up here understands that. Your input helps us make better decisions. Does anyone else on the committee have any other questions or comments about that?
Good.
So I would request, if there aren't any other, that we, if you don't mind, and there are people who would like to make comments, we have one more agenda on the item on the regular.
Do you want to take comments now, or do you want to?
I'd rather, let's just do that last item, and then we'll take comments after that, before we move to executive session.
Yeah.
Which is the policy. Recommendation from the superintendent.
Yeah, just give me a second.
Yep.
I jumped around too much. I was back in my November presentation and last month's presentation.
I
January
don't stop
presentation.
thinking.
Then I got to get back to the February presentation.
James, that number in November was 300,000. That was what we would add on for positions. Again, it wasn't all for the school. There was some town-wide stuff that we had on there as well.
Right, which again, the town has also done, adding some tech positions and some groundskeeping positions.
Groundskeeper, not a tech position.
Yep.
Groundskeeper position.
So that we had those groundskeepers on our original list of need, and they took those
That's in their
as a combined, and they put them in their budget.
So we do have a recommendation for policy KG, community use of school facilities. This committee's already approved this policy, except for the fees for town organizations and town nonprofit organizations. So the policy otherwise has been approved and accepted. I think we've discussed this at several meetings. We've actually worked in coordination with the rec department and the town, and the Board of Selectmen are considering adopting a similar policy in terms of all town fields, so it would be a consistent pricing structure for all of our fields throughout the community. And so, I'd like to make a recommendation that we move forward, accept the fee structure for our town groups.
I'll make a motion to approve the proposed revisions to the fee schedule.
Second.
A motion is made and second. Any questions,
One
comments?
thing I want to highlight on there is we did make a change to the original, I know it wasn't
Yep.
approved, but
Yep.
to the weekday Carver Youth Recreation for the turf field is dropped down to $75 per hour, down from, I think, the original 100 that we had on
Yep.
the original proposal. Again, that was not approved, that piece of it, but just for comparison purposes, the number goes up to 100 on the weekend, and anything outside of Carver, it's $150 per hour.
And
So we maintain that.
And we also reduced the hourly fee for field use to $15 an hour for community nonprofit groups for weekdays and $20 for weekends. So we've reduced the price structure a little bit based on the original proposal. So what's being proposed here this evening is a little bit lower than it was previously, just based on all the discussion we've had over this policy since going back to October now. We've looked at this policy several times.
So is there a plan, before I would make any vote, is there a plan to continue? I know you had a bunch of discussion and some groups have been brought together.
Yep.
Is there a plan to keep that system of communication going so that as we move forward, we make sure that it's adaptable and structured the right way, and if things come up or things happen, there's a sort of a venue to
Yeah, I'll definitely run with that, and
even our
spearhead.
quarterly meeting or something like that, just while we're getting it going, to make sure that we address any issues that come up before they become too big.
No problem. I can do that.
Right.
Again, the
Yeah,
goal
and-
of this is to, really, we don't know what we're gonna take in for money. Because
Right.
there's really been no accountability records on who's used what. So once we build that base, then we can start improvements on the field slowly as we go. And that's
And-
the goal with building up that.
And the advertising,
And-
all to go towards that same,
And we definitely talked about the concept here that, you know, we could reevaluate this in 6 months or a year and say, what did we really take in? So we're making some estimates of what we're gonna take in, and all the money that's being brought into this policy is gonna go back. I think Brad just said that we wanna emphasize that. That money is going back in to support the maintenance of these fields.
Right.
So we have all these new fields in the community. We're gonna have new softball fields at the elementary school. We have the new turf complex at the middle high school. We have a lot of redone, nice new spaces, and the money that's being raised through this policy is going to go to support maintaining those spaces.
And the worn down, beaten.
And try to bring
down
back,
area
and try to bring back
around
some of the spaces that have been beat down for various reasons that we've talked about a lot over the last 2 years is why those
But this
spaces
isn't
have
gonna
been beat
happen
down.
overnight. That's the one thing I wanna make sure.
they've established a cycle with that over time to
Which we
rotate the
presented
fields.
last
Yep.
fall.
Yep.
Yeah.
When would this go into effect if we voted it in?
Right away, right?
Right away? Yeah.
That's what the proposal would be, yeah.
For
But I
spring
think,
sports.
For spring sports, yeah.
Right.
I think Scott and myself are willing to work with organizations. I mean, obviously too, in this policy, if someone's gonna use the field for 3 months out of the year, they wanna book a long-term rental, we'll work with them on overall pricing structure to make it like more or less a flat fee rather than a hourly basis cost.
Right.
Especially in the spring with sports coming up that have already built their budgets and everything, we don't want them to not be able to play on our fields, obviously.
And that's why I want to make sure that that communication line is kept open.
Yeah, we met with almost all spring sports already for youth too, so
All right.
we're all on the same page.
What was, if you don't mind, Andrew, what was there, or Brad, what was the youth group's feedback on this? How are they looking at it?
They want us to charge more, so we can.
No.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure.
No, but they, you know, we were in essence dragging our feet a little bit, trying to make it as perfect as possible, and we had steps to it. And they were proactive in their approach for the spring to try to be ahead of this, and they knew what the vision is, you know, for the long term. And I felt like they were really behind the overall, you know, true vision of what this is. Like Brad said, it's not instantaneous. You know, you don't pay the fee on March 1st, and then April 1, everything's beautifully lush and green.
Right.
But you know, there is the vision, and then there'll be accountability to make sure that that happens going forward.
Okay. Thank you.
And again, the town is trying to pass this policy similar policy on their side to make sure. Part of the problem was they were fearful that if we add our fees and the town doesn't take care of their fees on their end, their field would get all the use and it'd be trampled. Establishing a policy that's seen across the board makes sense to make sure field use is about the same, exactly.
Right.
Stephanie? Good. All those in favor of approving?
Aye.
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 It's unanimous.
All right, thank you.
So, as opposed to reports from the school committee, unless somebody has anything real urgent, I'd like to open up the floor to anybody who might want to come up and add a comment or make a comment, or put a voice in. Sure. I don't want to diminish it all, just kind of make it brief, just so everybody can get up and get in.
Very brief.
Hello again.
Hi.
Just introduce yourself when you come up, please. If you
My name is Pat Tobin. I'm an ELL teacher here in the school. My coaching to you would be to look at us all as a giant team. You're our line of defense, our first line of defense. You're the people that have to go to the Board of Selectmen and ask for what you need. Not be thrown a ball and say, okay, this is what we have, let's work with that. It's really, what do we need? And then say, no, this is what we need. Our administrators are our second line of defense, and they support us. Teachers, we're in the trenches working with the kids, and you know this, you're a teacher. But we all are doing our jobs, and we're all crucial in this. If you don't do your job, it impacts us. If we don't do our job, it impacts you and the kids. So just when going forward, just try to look at us all as a giant team. We need to support each other.
Thank you.
Thank you.
How are you?
Hi.
I'm Abby Albin. I'm the speech language pathologist. I work pre-K to second grade at the elementary school. So first of all, I just want to say that I'm fairly rational. I like to think of myself as that. So when I'm listening to you guys, and I went to the joint meeting that you guys had with the town selectmen as well, and I recognize, you can't pay bills if you're not getting anything in, and I recognize that, and I think a lot of us do recognize that. But Mr. Cardarelli, you asked about the impact upon the cutting down, or should I say the shaving down, of the speech language pathology assistant position. I can't speak to everybody, but I can speak for myself because I utilize her services the most. I currently have a caseload of 76. That's going from pre-K to second grade, with a workload or a session group of 157 sessions a week. So that means that for some kids I don't provide direct service, I provide just a consultative basis. And then for other students, I have a student I see 5 times a week. So the expanse of service and what I'm able to provide is is limited by, quite frankly, time. Time and how effective my service is. If my groups get larger, the effectiveness of my service, I feel, goes down. I'm not able to provide as much attention to my students. But one thing I did want to talk with you about was in terms of workload. For every child, and this is the same with every special education child, speech and language or otherwise, it's safe to say that every child that comes in has 3 hours tacked to them. That would be evaluation time, report writing time, and then the IEP meeting itself. So if you multiply my kids, so 76 times 3, that means I have 228 hours packed in to those little 10 fingers, 10 toes. Those are my little people, and every one of them comes with 3 hours of work. So to cut down the person who's allowing me the, shall I say, bare minimum flexibility to be able to not only assess other students, but also be able to provide the assistance to my current students, let alone those that I'm gaining in the future. It is an impact. And I think it is also for my colleague in grades 3 to 5. Also, our speech language assistant provides support to the middle high school SLP, and there's only one of them. There's 2 of us in the elementary school, and there's one over there, and she does provide services there too. So it's not just a little impact. And I know you guys have a lot of information, and we've given you a lot of numbers, but I did just want to also highlight that fact that the workload doesn't just stop with just the little human. There's a lot that goes into that. And having that position at its full power gives us the ability to provide our services with a lot more fidelity and a lot more care, the care that these kids really need. Okay? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
That was really good.
Hello, Jason Greenwood here. I just have a couple clarifications. The first, when you talked about if you added school choice 6 to 12, was that $50,000? Did you say $50,000 would decrease from the shortfall if that is approved by the committee? All right.
That's an estimate.
An estimate, yeah, but approximately. Has there been any looking into applying for a Project Lead the Way grant that would fund the technology teacher? So it'd fund the teacher, the supplies, the training, all that?
Meredith and I are both biting at that question, but Meredith really wants to answer, so I'll go to Meredith.
All right.
So yes, we've looked into that tomorrow, actually, so your timing is perfect. We have a meeting with the head of Project Lead the Way from the state, and kind of a Q&A with the department chairs that would be most aligned with their programs. And the idea, even though we missed the first round of funding, would be to see if we could access those grant monies. There's also a myriad of other grants that we're in the process of applying for.
And Meredith, can you just clarify for everybody in the audience? Just give it thumb sketch
Yep. So Project
Lead the Way is.
Yep, Project Lead the Way is a national program that is considered quite rigorous and provides pathways related to biomedical engineering, computer technology, and then there's also a middle school program. So we'd be looking at the 2 high school programs, working with both existing staff and then this new position.
And can you also talk about some other grant funding and we talked about this in our Career Pathways presentation, but I think it's good for people to hear it here this evening in terms of we're looking for multiple avenues to try to fund the pathways that we're looking to put forward. So if you can talk about some of the other grant opportunities that we're looking for, what other grants is due Wednesday?
Yes. So we have a grant coming right up that we just barely found out about that would allow us to purchase capital goods related to these programs so that there would be no depression or no increased burden in terms of levy taxes. And it would give us the opportunity to supply some of these different resources that are needed to implement the program. So we have a skills capital grant that we're applying for that is funded directly from the governor's budget. And we're hopeful that we'll be able to pull that together. Additionally, there are grant funding opportunities, and they're excessive in terms of what we're agreeing to do and also the amount of time that we're looking at in order to shape these programs. But as Mr. Neef mentioned, there's an innovations pathway. There's also early college. And then the third one is called Chapter 74, which would be your traditional career technical education. All of those come with specific frameworks, but the benefit of those programs is not only some seed money that they provide to our district, but an increased per student funding in terms of Chapter 70. So
that's what's proposed in the governor's budget for innovation and for early college. That funding stream already exists in Chapter 74. In Chapter 70 funding through a Chapter 74 program. It doesn't yet exist for innovation and early college, but it's in the governor's budget.
And just one last thing, and I'm sure you've looked at this, but just curiosity. Have you looked at maybe eliminating things like iReady, that I know that has a nice heavy price tag, or any other vendors in the district where we could, you could replace iReady, I know, with something like Khan or something other that.
We're always evaluating our programs and the cost of those programs, and that's something we're always open to looking at and discussing.
Yeah,
So,
that was
we've
just
evaluated those things.
Yeah, that was just something I thought of. Thank you. I appreciate your time.
Thank you. Anybody else? Thank you for your comments. We appreciate it very much.
I actually have one, can I?
Please.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm not sure it's a comment. I
Just
definitely have a
introduce
comment,
yourself,
but
if
I
you
also
don't
have a
mind.
question. And my name is Jackie Perkins. I lived in Carver for 10 years, and I teach in the English department at the high school. I attended the Selectmen and School Committee joint meeting, the last one that you had. And you outlined the difference, the disparity of what we need versus the 2.5 that was offered. And Mr. Neef, on a couple of occasions, you actually said to members of the Selectmen, I am not asking for that amount, meaning the difference between level funding, level service, plus the technology position and the budget that you were proposing. And so I've heard some rhetoric here tonight that makes me think that you are open and that you are, that is a possibility. But as we continue to look at all of these are going to be the solutions if we don't get, there's one thing that's just not being said. And I think, and maybe it's a misunderstanding I have about the process, and if it is, please correct me. But if the selectmen and the town is not seeing it the way that you see it, isn't it for the people of the town to vote for the budget that you ask for at town meeting? And why aren't you willing to just say, all of this is a problem and we have a shortfall, but we're just going to go to the town meeting and ask for the money that we need? Because while we may spend, I don't know what the numbers that are being thrown out there, as a percentage of our budget on school, at that we capped it at that 70-30, right? But while we may do that, we're being compared to other towns that don't provide anywhere near the services. They don't. we don't pay for our fire department. We don't pay for sewer. We don't pay for a whole bunch of things. And I'm talking like a resident because I've lived here and I've realized that there are very few services in Carver. So as a percentage of a budget, it really doesn't matter when it comes to Carver. And so why aren't we as a school committee and faculty and everybody coming together to organize the town so that the town actually understands? Because you're right, James, that is the argument. They have done so much for us in the last 5 years. They have. But what no one talks about is the fact that many of those things should have been done 10 years ago if they had been solicited, if the public had been solicited and informed and educated. So what can we do as a team to educate the public and organize them? Because they're in 40 square miles with no central place of understanding or location. I don't know how many of you are watching out there, Carver, but it's not enough. People don't know what's happening. And so, yeah, we got a great new school. And yeah, we got great football field and all that stuff, and it looks good, and we can take pride in that. But why would we be willing, as a joint unit, to ask for anything less than what we need at that town meeting? That's my question.
Anyone else change their mind? Sure.
My name's Tracy Eldridge. I live in Carver. I was an employee for Carver for some years, and I had to retire due to family. I have 6 children at home. So I do have kids. I have 3 older that do go to Old Colony, and I have 3 younger children that are in the school systems. Working as a para for the program in the special education department, I know firsthand, what these kids go through and what the teachers go through. I completely understand that you guys have a job to do. I understand that there's gonna be shortfalls. I understand that sometimes you guys have to make a difficult decision. I ask that you look at those children in the CAP and TAP program because I firsthand have seen those kids. I understand you're not getting rid of the program, but placing them into MAP and GAP, where I've also had experiences working in, not all of those children fit into those programs. Those children are amazing kids, but sometimes those puzzle pieces just don't fit in those programs. And that's what I ask you to look at, because as much as I love our other teachers and adding a caseload to making it 30 kids in a class, I don't want that. I don't want that for my children coming up. I have a preschooler, a 1st grader, and a 7th grader. My older 3 chose to leave just because the Carver system was not working for them. They couldn't function. And that's what they chose. And I look at my 3 children as they couldn't handle how the program works. They do 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off, and that's what works for them. So I know my kids couldn't handle certain things. Then I look at those children that have graduated and have done because I have connections with these kids, and I've seen the growth in them. And I see how amazing they are. And what I don't want to happen is these children just get put into the program where you guys say you can provide them with the services, but sometimes putting them with those other children just doesn't mix, and they will get lost by the wayside. That's it.
Thank you.
Make a motion.
Sure. Yep.
Hello, my name is Michelle Taylor, and at least for the next few months, I'm the Director of Literacy, so I have a few things to say about literacy. I grew up in this town. I graduated from Carver High School, and I met my husband in this town. He also graduated from this high school, and many of my best friends I met here in Carver. It has brought me great joy over the years to watch my best friend's children enter the Carver schools and to work with them and to see all the growth and innovation that as a district we have pursued. I would like to think that I was a part of some of that with the literacy initiative and with the writing of the educational plan that eventually became the new building. And I just want to caution the committee to really think carefully about not just the cuts that we're going to make, but the students that we are going to leave behind by making these cuts. Over the last 15 years, we have gone from a staff of 5 reading specialists with 10 Title I paraprofessionals, and now we are down to 3 reading specialists and no reading support paraprofessionals. I was in data meetings this morning, and I had to put a whole group of students on a wait list because I do not have staff to support them, and I do not have a way to meet their needs. More cuts in literacy is not the answer. And I really fear for the children of the community when the community is not willing to invest in them, because that is the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for all your comments and your input, and thank you for coming. And I do hope to see you again on the 11th when we vote. I would accept the motion.
To move to executive session for the purpose of reviewing and determining release of executive session minutes.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. That's a roll call. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Unanimous. Thank you.
Aye.
Meeting is adjourned.